Not everyone knows, but there is a heavenly promise tied to a simple piece of fabric, something so powerful that it has spanned centuries, withstood persecution, and continues to transform lives to this day. Does it seem like an exaggeration? Well, the story of Our Lady of Mount Carmel proves otherwise. Her scapular is not just a symbol, but a true spiritual shield, filled with faith, hope, and trust in God. And the most impressive thing? This devotion has a direct connection to one of the greatest Marian apparitions in history. Now, stop and think. How many times have you felt fear for the future, insecurity about your choices, or that anguish of not knowing if you're on the right path? The truth is that we all seek protection, and a clear sign that we are not alone. And that is exactly what Our Lady of Mount Carmel offered the world. Her mantle of love and wisdom extends through generations, bringing comfort, renewal, and a promise of salvation. But how did it all begin? What is the true meaning of the scapular? And most importantly, what can this devotion change in your life today? The answer to these questions may be more surprising than you might think, because at the end of the day, faith is not just about belief, but about commitment and surrender. And when we understand this story, we realize that God is inviting us to something much greater than we imagined. Devotion to Our Lady of Mount Carmel has deep roots in faith and tradition. Its history dates back to Mount Carmel in the Holy Land, where a group of hermits sought to live in constant prayer and surrender to God. Inspired by the prophet Elijah, they saw that mountain as a spiritual refuge, a place where faith was strengthened in the face of challenges. Hope guided them, as they believed that there they were closer to the divine. It was not just a physical place, but a symbol of trust in the presence of God amid life's tribulations. Over the centuries, this devotion grew and spread, crossing borders and touching hearts. Our Lady of Mount Carmel became a sign of protection, a mother who supports her children in times of affliction. The faith of those first monks became a legacy that still inspires millions of devotees around the world. And this tradition has not only been kept alive by history, but by the countless testimonies of those who found comfort and wisdom by turning to Mary in their needs. Today, devotion continues to teach a valuable lesson. True trust in God sustains us in difficult times. Just as the ancient hermits found a shelter for their faith on Mount Carmel, each of us can build our own inner mountain, a spiritual refuge where hope never wavers. And this story takes us to a decisive moment, when Mary, in her infinite compassion, chose to manifest herself in a special way to a man of great faith. In the midst of the uncertainties of the 13th century, when the world was undergoing great transformations, a man of deep faith received a gift from heaven. St. Simon Stock, prior of the Carmelite order, cried out for divine protection for his brothers, who were facing persecution and challenges. In response, the Virgin Mary appeared to him on July 16, 1251, holding a scapular and making a promise of hope. He who dies clothed in this habit will not suffer an eternal fire. This apparition was not only a sign of comfort, but an invitation to absolute trust in God's protection. The scapular then became a sacred symbol of alliance with Our Lady of Mount Carmel. It is not a simple object, but a daily reminder of commitment to faith and the pursuit of a virtuous life. Many devotees throughout history have testified to the peace and wisdom they felt when wearing it with devotion. It has become a refuge for those seeking spiritual protection, like a shield against the storms of life. Just as a soldier does not go into battle without his armor, the faithful who wear the scapular are clothed with trust in divine mercy. This promise of Our Lady continues to echo to this day, inviting each one to strengthen their faith and live according to God's teachings. But the story does not end there. The apparition to St. Simon Stock marked just one chapter in the history of the Carmelite order, which, despite the difficulties, expanded its mission and took its devotion beyond the borders of the Holy Land. And it is precisely about this evolution that we need to talk now. The scapular is much more than a simple religious object. It represents a commitment of faith and a spiritual alliance with Our Lady of Mount Carmel. Wearing it is a gesture of trust and hope, a constant reminder of divine protection. Since it was given to St. Simon Stock, this piece has become a powerful symbol of devotion and intercession, a true shield for those who wish to live under protection of God. But do we really understand its meaning? Or do we just use it as an amulet? The wisdom of the Church teaches us that the scapular is not a magical talisman, but rather a sign of a life commitment. Those who wear are invited to pursue a life of prayer, charity, and surrender to God, following in the footsteps of Mary. It is a daily invitation to faith, reminding us that our protection comes from trust in the Lord and not just from external symbols. Just as a key does not open doors by itself, the scapular reminds us that we must live the gospel so that its promise may be fulfilled. Many testimonies throughout history reveal how the scapular has been a sign of hope in times of danger. whether in wars, accidents, or personal challenges. There are reports of people who felt the presence of God when holding it with faith. But its greatest value is not only in its immediate protection, but in the promise it carries, that those who live under the intercession of Our Lady will have her help not only in this life, but also in eternity. And it was this promise that gave rise to the so-called Sabbatine privilege, a special grace granted to those who consecrate themselves to this devotion. The Sabbatine privilege is one of the most beautiful promises associated with the scapular, a true gift of hope for those who live their faith with devotion. According to tradition, the Virgin Mary appeared to Pope John XXII in the 14th century and assured him that those who wear the scapular will be freed from purgatory on the first Saturday after his death. Imagine the comfort this promise has brought to thousands of believers over the centuries. Knowing that the Mother of God intercedes for those who trust in her is a relief for hearts that fear eternal judgment. But this grace is not granted just anyhow. To receive the Sabbatine privilege, the Church instructs the faithful not only to wear the scapular, but also to live a life of prayer and righteousness. It is necessary to pray, cultivate good works, and seek the sacraments. After all, trusting God does not mean expecting everything to happen without effort, but rather to act with wisdom and faith. Just as someone who expects a harvest needs to plant and care for the soil, salvation also requires our active participation. Throughout history, countless testimonies reinforce this promise. People who lived lives of faith and devotion to the scapular reported signs of peace and hope in their final moments. Trust in Mary's intercession transforms the prospect of death into a reunion with God, a return to the Father's house. And this certainty has spanned the centuries, being confirmed by the Church itself, which has always reinforced the importance of this devotion. And if the scapular is such a strong sign of protection and salvation, its presence in the history of the Church also shows how this devotion has been recognized and encouraged by the popes over time. The Church has always viewed the scapular as a visible sign of divine protection, a reminder that faith and trust in God guide the path of those seeking salvation. Since the 13th century, several popes have reaffirmed the importance of this devotion, encouraging its use as a true spiritual commitment. It is not an amulet or a magical object, but rather a symbol of surrender and hope. Over the centuries, this tradition has grown stronger, overcoming periods of persecution and transformation, always bearing the mark of Mary's promise. One of the most remarkable moments in the history of the scapular occurred in Fatima, when the Virgin Mary herself appeared to the 3 shepherd children and, in the last apparition, held a scapular in her hands. This detail reinforced the link between the message of Fatima and Carmelite devotion, as a reminder that prayer and conversion are indispensable paths for those seeking true wisdom. Many saints, such as St. John Paul II, also encourage the use of the scapular, seeing it as a sign of trust and protection of the Mother of God. Even in modern times, this devotion lives on. Many people find spiritual support in the scapular, especially in times of uncertainty and pain. Wearing it means choosing to live according to principles of the gospel, strengthening one's faith, and trusting that God guides each step. The promise of Our Lady of Mount Carmel continues to echo, bringing comfort to afflicted hearts and renewing hope to those who wish to follow a path of peace and salvation. And as we delve deeper into the story of love and protection, we come across an even more moving story: the journey of Our Lady of Mount Carmel and profound impact that her devotion has had on the world. Now that you know the story behind Our Lady of Mount Carmel and the profound meaning of the scapular, the big question is, what are you going to do with this knowledge? Because knowing without action doesn't change anything. Faith is not an abstract concept. It is a path of surrender and trust in God. And if He gives us such clear signs of protection and hope, it makes no sense to ignore them. So, how about taking a concrete step today? Maybe it's time to strengthen your devotion, seek more wisdom about this tradition, and, above all, live with more confidence in the divine presence in your life. Reflect. What is stopping you from completely surrendering yourself to God's love and protection? Isn't it time to put more faith in your daily life, to seek a deeper spirituality and truly live what you believe? If Our Lady left a promise of salvation and protection, why not embrace it with all your heart? Small daily actions make all the difference. A sincere prayer, a moment of reflection, a gesture of charity. Faith is nourished in practice. And if this content made sense to you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this message with someone who needs to hear it today. And of course, if you want to continue learning and strengthening your spiritual journey, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, we continue to seek wisdom and grow together. May God bless you and see you in the next video.